Well, I've seen worse starts to a Blue Jackets game, but I have also seen much better starts to a Blue Jackets game. Plus, Mathieu Olivier is here to stay. We're going to break that down and more on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, I did plan to just talk about last night's game in this episode. It wasn't a great game. There were some things to like about it. But as I was basically setting up to record, they signed Mathieu Olivier to a brand new contract. So we're going to talk a little bit about the game, but we're also going to talk about Mathieu Olivier's new contract and what's next on Don Waddell's to-do list. Let's get the game talk out of the way, and then we can talk about the fun stuff, which is Mathieu Olivier's new contract. Blue Jackets lose have not the best showing I've ever seen from the Blue Jackets. They picked it up a little bit. I thought they had a good first period, question mark. And I thought they had a good third period. I'll say that. The first period was good if you take the first 90 seconds away from it, where the Lightning go up 2-1. Blue Jackets responded really well to that. I thought Zach Werenski gets a goal. And unfortunately, I think that just made the Tampa Bay Lightning more mad than anything, because I believe after that goal, they outshot the Blue Jackets 18-1, scored 2 more goals, and were just the second period was it was unpleasant. Let's say that Blue Jackets got outshot in the second period, 18-8. Again, picked it up in the third period, but that Werenski goal, I do genuinely think it just annoyed them. And they made it 4-1. Zach Werenski comes in clutch again, makes it 4-2. They had that disallowed goal on the power play just before that, so it was almost 5-1. But for the most part, and I said this last night, Tampa Bay has an extra gear that they can get into, right? It's about that time. They're gearing up for the playoffs. They know they've done this, they've done this song and dance before, right? It's nothing new to them, right? They're at that point in the season where they're like, okay, let's see how, let's crank it up under the gear, right? The Blue Jackets couldn't seem to match that, right? They weathered the storm in the first period reasonably well, I thought. Tampa Bay comes out in the second period, again, in that extra gear, and the Blue Jackets couldn't really match that. I think they struggled, which is unsurprising, considering, Tampa Bay, very experienced team, basically a lock to make the playoffs every year. Blue Jackets haven't made the playoffs since the bubble, right? It's been a minute. Very young team. I don't know how many players on the team off the top of my head actually have playoff experience. I think, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Maybe 9 players. I'm just kind of guessing here. I haven't looked that up, but I'm guessing based on who's been on, who's not been on the team since the last time they made the playoffs, and then guys like Fabbro who've come in. Obviously, he's got playoff experience in Nashville. James Van Riemsdyk has a ton of playoff experience, etc., etc. So it makes sense that the Blue Jackets struggled in this game. I think it just kind of showed that, again, Tampa Bay has that extra gear that they can get into, and that's the kind of gear that you need if you want to get anywhere in the playoffs. That being said, I thought there were some good performances from some Blue Jackets. Zach Werenski just continues to be so good. He hit 20 goals on the night, was the only Blue Jacket to score goals. again, like just a ridiculous goal in the first period. That short-handed goal off that pass from Adam Fantilli, like that was a fun goal. The Johnson to Fantilli to Werenski short-handed goal, I like that a lot. Like again, he just continues to do just stupid things, right? Like he's up to what 66 points on the season, I think, which puts him, I believe that's 21 points away from Panarin's record of 87 points in the season. I can do math sometimes. He's up to 66 points in 60 games. Now he's missed a game already, so he's only got 21 games left on the year. But if he gets at least 1 point in all of those 21 games, he'll tie Panarin's record. Now, based on his last handful of games, I think he's on a little bit of a streak here. Obviously, his streak ended. His like 23 game home point streak ended the other day, but he's got 2 points against Tampa Bay and 2 points against Detroit in the outdoor game after going pointless 2 games before that. Game before that, 3 points, goal and 2 assists. Like, it's very rare. I feel like if Werenski's getting a point, he's probably getting 2, maybe 3, right? So I still think he does it. He's on pace for, I had Elite Prospects open and then closed it. I believe he's on pace for 87 points at the minute. This has him on pace for 89 points in 81 games. So that would in fact break Panarin's record, which is a lot of fun. But again, Zach Werenski, just like the best player on the ice, and it's not particularly close for the Blue Jackets. And it kind of seems like he's doing this game in, game out, like it's nothing. It's really, really fun to watch. Another guy that I wanted to talk about briefly is Yegor Chinakhov, who has missed the last like 40 games, hasn't played since like November, I want to say. Came back into the lineup unexpectedly. Like he hadn't been skating, skated once, left practice early, stopped skating. Joined practice Monday morning, I think it was. Got slotted into the top 6 line combinations, and then was ready to play last night. And I thought he looked pretty good, honestly. Was played 13-25. Had 2 shots on goal, 3 hits, and 1 giveaway. I liked that line a lot. I think the Chinakhov, Jenner, Johnson line had a lot of really good extended looks in Tampa's zone, right? It felt like that was the line that a lot of the offense was driving through, which is not what I expected necessarily, but thinking about it in a little bit more kind of detail, Yegor Chinakhov is a goal scorer, right? He's got that wicked shot. He's really fast. Kent Johnson is, he starts the play and someone else is going to finish it, right? And I feel like if you could get someone who's not Boone Jenner between those two guys, like honestly, like you put Cole Sillinger there, that feels like a really, really great second line. Or Monahan's going to be healthy soon. Put Monahan there. I'm still kind of up in the air. This is probably something we'll kind of talk about over the next couple of weeks is what do you do when Monahan comes back, right? Does he get his old spot back on the top line between Marchenko and Voronkov? Does Fantilli get to keep it and you move Monahan down to the second line and then you have like a top 6 of Voronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko, Chinakhov, Monahan, Johnson? Like, I think that's my preference at the minute. Obviously, with the caveat that I don't know how Chinakhov, Monahan, Johnson will work as a line. I'd have to see it in action. But Johnson plays a very similar game to Gaudreau, and so I would like to see Monahan and Johnson get significant time together because I do think that they would click, and I think that would be fun to watch. But for a guy that hadn't played in 3 months, some of the timing was off. He didn't quite have the legs that we're used to seeing Chinakhov have, but I thought I liked his game a lot last night. Obviously didn't register on the score sheet, but he impressed me. he was more noticeable than I was expecting, right? Again, similarly to Boone Jenner, who I, talked at length about how it's probably going to take him a minute to find his game again, and then immediately comes out and has 7 points in his first 4 games back from injury. Chinakhov, again, I think, there's some work to do there to kind of, again, find the timing and get his legs back properly, because skating in practice is not the same as skating during a game. But he looked dangerous. He looked, I would say, 80% of the way to the Chinakhov that we saw at the beginning of the season, which is a really, really great sign, because this team has needed more depth in the lineup for, a little while now. And you're seeing Jenner come back. You're seeing Chinakhov come back. Obviously, it sucks that Cole just going to be out for a couple of weeks. But, you're going to get Monahan back soon. It sounds like Gabranson might be ready for the playoffs if they make the playoffs. Like, the team is getting healthy, right? And that means that the team is getting deeper, and it means that hopefully we won't have to suffer things like Joseph Lebate on the team for very much longer, which is such a choice that this team is making. But that's beside the point. Gonna take a quick break. Then when we get back, I do want to talk about Mathieu Olivier's new contract, because it signed about 20 minutes ago. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I will tell you about FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bet into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. It's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and also us, the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We talked about the game, and it wasn't great. We talked about a couple of good performances, but like I said, I was setting up to record and talk all about the game. Wasn't thrilled about it, and then they dropped Olivier's new contract. So I figured, hey, that's way more exciting than the endless losing in Tampa that this team seems to do. So let's talk about it, because it feels like it's going to be a contentious contract. I think the people who love it are going to really love it. The people who don't like it are going to really hate it. Ironically, I do think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. So let me pull up the exact details just to make sure that I have them right. Mathieu Olivier signed to a 6-year contract extension, $18 million, which means that is going to be $3 million a year, right up until the end of the 2030-2031 NHL season. Now, on the face of things, this doesn't look great, right? 6 years is a long time, especially for a player who plays like Olivier, right? Like, we see it all the time. Enforcers, the game is tough on them, wear and tear. Even when he's not fighting, he's still playing that heavy kind of throw yourself into the board, throw yourself into another player type of game, right? Like, that doesn't usually bode well for longevity in this league. $3 million is fine. I was hearing reports that it was going to be upwards of like $4.5 or $5 million. So to get it to 3 is pretty good. I feel like it's going to be about 3% of the cap next year, give or take. Like, it's going to be slightly more than that. The cap is going to be, I think, 88 million next year. Something I should have pulled up before I started talking about this. But my point is, it's going to take up a very, very small amount of the cap. So the cap next season is gonna go to the cap right now is 88 million. It's gonna go up to 95.5 million next season, which means it'll be 3 million of that will be just under 3%, or just over, 3% of the cap. And then it's projected to increase again to 104 million the season after that, and then by 2028 the cap is apparently going to be 113.5 million dollars, which means that his salary will be probably closer to 2.5% of the cap, which is about where it should be, honestly. So the AAV I am fine with. The term I still think is a little bit long. I would have aimed for 4. No, I would have aimed for 3 and probably settled at 4 or 5. 5 still feels a little bit long, but I feel like the team loves Olivier. Like that's the main thing. Is the room loves him, the fan base loves him. Every other team in the league covets this kind of player, right? And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, because I do feel like he does have limitations as to his effect, right? Like, but he is clearly, like, again, beloved in the room, beloved by fans. He has become a surprisingly vocal part of the team. When you talk about like off-ice stuff this season, I feel like he does a lot of interviews. He's very well-spoken. Like, he has a lot of, my friend always calls it an emotional intelligence, which is something that is lacking in, I would say, in most of the average NHL players. But that's one of those like intangibles that I don't necessarily think that contracts should be based on, but I understand that it is, right? Like, he's been wearing an A this season. He's having a hell of a season, honestly, which again might be that it's a contract year, might be that he's getting more opportunities, might be that he's flourishing under Everson's system. We just don't know. But he is currently at 21 points on the season, 12 goals, 9 assists in 61 games. His previous career high was set in his first season with Columbus, where he had 15 points in 66 games. And last season he had 5 goals. The season before that he had 5 goals. So he has 25 goals total in 6 years of being in the NHL, or 5 and a bit years. He played over 3 years with the Predators. He only played 48 games. So, like, can we really count those? He played 66, 54, and 61 so far with the Blue Jackets. And again, is on a much better trajectory than he's basically ever been before. Now, he's also taken a lot more penalty minutes than he's ever taken before. He crossed the 100 penalty minutes mark last night. Ironically, like, I think last night was one of the worst games of the season for him. I thought the penalty was stupid and like, frankly, unnecessary. Like, it was really un-Olivier, like, honestly, because I've seen it. He's taken penalties this season. They've not all been great. But like, I can understand where he's coming from with them, right? Like, or a lot of his penalties have been fighting majors, for example. Like, that's most of his penalties, I feel like. Like, again, one fighting major, 2 fighting majors, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, of his 113 penalty minutes, 50 of those, I believe, are fighting majors. So, that's the reason for the inflated total. Like, you look at the penalty minutes and you're like, oh wow, he takes a lot of penalties, but like, typically I feel like he takes guys with them, except for last night, where he takes a double minor and also a 10-minute misconduct. So he's off the ice for 14 minutes total. And yes, the Blue Jackets managed to kill that penalty, but when you're taking more penalty minutes than you're actually playing time on the ice, like, that to me is a problem. He played 11.5 minutes last night, so 2.5 minutes fewer than the penalty minutes that he ended up sitting for, which is frustrating. And especially, again, he's been good this season. Like, I was talking about this to my friend at the outdoor game. Like, I've done basically a complete 180 on Olivier. I was so over him last season. I thought he was basically useless to the team unless they needed a fight for energy or whatever. This season, I think he's really come into his own. Um, and so, like, I'm happy that he's still with the team, right? Like, again, do I love the contract? I don't love the contract. I also don't hate the contract. Like, it's fine. I cautiously gave it a B on Twitter, and I think I'm sticking with that. Again, I would love for it to be a year or two shorter. I would love for there not to be a 10-team no trade list, but the worst case scenario is in 3 years' time, like, he's not as effective as he is, and you can bury that in the minors, right? Like, it's not untradeable, it's not unburyable. Um, and again, even if next year his point totals drop back down to where they were prior to this season, there are gonna be people that there are gonna be teams that call about him, right? Like, I don't think he's untradeable. It's not like he's Ryan Reeves, right? Um, could be very easy to turn him into Ryan Reeves, but as of right now, I don't hate it. It's not my favorite contract that Don Waddell has signed, but I don't hate it. I do think it's funny that this is the longest term contract that he signed with the Blue Jackets. So obviously he had the 4 young guys to sign over the summer: Chidakov, Sillinger, um, Marchenko, and Johnson, and all those guys got 2 or 3 years. Somewhere between 2 million and 3 million. I don't remember off the top of my head what everyone's contract value is, but Olivier getting more term and more money than all of them is very funny. Um, and I understand it because, he's watched Olivier all season long. Um, he came into the summer, not knowing what was going to happen with any of those players, right? The team was in upheaval. Players were leaving, players were being taken away from us. Like, there was a lot of up and down in the Blue Jackets off season, right? And so I can understand Don Waddell not wanting to sign players that he's unfamiliar, like he's like not super familiar with, to long-term deals. He's more familiar with Olivier. I do still think it's very funny that he looked at Kent Johnson and was like, yes, 3 years at 1.9 million, and then looked at Mathieu Olivier and was like, yes, 6 years at 3 million. Almost like double what Kent Johnson is making. It's very funny. I think it's do I agree with it? Not necessarily, but I do think it's very funny. Let's take another quick break, and then when we get back, what's next for General Manager Don Waddell? Because his to-do list, I feel like his to-do list is every time he ticks something off, something else gets added to it, right? So, like, what's next for Don Waddell as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline and this team making a playoff push or not? So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Olivier's new contract is out of the way. Great. That means that Don Waddell can start focusing on other stuff. Got a handful of other players that are kind of in conversations right now. The biggest one for me, Dante Fabbro needs a new contract. Blue Jackets picked him up off of waivers from Nashville, which it must sting for Nashville to see Mathieu Olivier finding success in Columbus like this when they got a 4th-round pick for him, which I don't know what that 4th-round pick ended up being, but I can look that up while I also talk about Dante Fabbro, who they got nothing for. He's making $2.5 million this year, is a UFA this summer, has immediately clicked with Zach Werenski on that top pairing. Like, to me, that is immediately the next priority for Don Waddell. I know a lot of people saying that Ivan Provorov should be the next priority, whether that's trading him or re-signing him. But to me, Dante Fabbro is younger and better than Provorov. And again, probably the most chemistry we've seen for Zach Werenski since Seth Jones left. And it's been, 4 years. So to me, you keep Dante Fabbro. I don't know what kind of contract he'll get. I would like to think that it'll be semi long term. Like, I would love to see, 4 times 5, maybe. So, and whether that's, 4 years at 5 million or 5 years at 4 million, I would be fine with both of those. He might get a 1 or 2 year show me deal to see if this year was a fluke or not, but I'm not convinced that that's going to happen, especially because, like, Mathieu Olivier, right? He got almost a $2 million raise, and I think this is the first time he's ever had a contract longer than his entry-level contract. Like, it's wild for him to go from getting 1.1 million for 1 year to 3 million for 6 years, right? Like that's a huge leap. So I'd like to think that Dante Fabbro will not have to do the show me thing. And I will be frustrated if he does, because again, like if you're going to give Mathieu Olivier all that money in term, then why aren't you giving it to Dante Fabbro, who I think is going to be more effective longer term, plays more minutes, contributes more to the team. And again, like a lot of the battle with elite defensemen, I feel like, is giving them a real partner to play with. Like, look at Quinn Hughes, for example, in Vancouver. Quinn Hughes, best defenseman in the NHL. His best defense partner is maybe Philip Hronek, who he's playing with at the minute. Maybe the 5 minutes that he got to play with Alexander Edler back in the day. Like, he's never had a good, solid defensive partner, and he's still doing the things that he does, right? Like, imagine how good Quinn Hughes would be if he had a real defense partner. And similarly with Werenski, like Werenski was good to start the season. I liked him and Provorov a decent amount, but Dante Fabbro comes into the picture and suddenly Zach Werenski takes off, right? Like, I'm not saying that it's entirely due to Dante Fabbro, but a lot of the battle with elite defensemen is finding the guy for them to play with, right? And Dante Fabbro is the guy that Werenski plays with, and he's been really, really impressive so far. So to me, that's the big priority. I know a lot of people want them to sign Provorov. Again, like, go ahead and sign him long term, get him locked up. Like, he loves being here. He's been effective this season. But to me, I just, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I won't go into it like at length again. But you have Werenski locked up long term. You have Severson locked up long term. Hopefully, you get Fabbro locked up long term. If you then go ahead and lock up Provorov long term, like, Provorov is not going to be content on the third pairing, right? He's going to command, and again, he's at that perfect age, and he's having a good season right now. Like, he is at the perfect position to make like 8x8 or more, right? I think it'll be 7 by something, because the Blue Jackets won't re-sign him, I don't think. But he wants that long-term deal. He wants that free agent money that usually comes at around about, between 27 and 30. Provorov is 28, I think. Yeah. And is coming off of like his last longish contract. Like, he wants that 7 or 8 year contract, and he wants to get plenty of money. And I know that he says that he wants to do that in Columbus, but I don't think there's room for him. Like, again, unless you can get rid of the Severson contract, which you can't, like, for my money, like, maybe a sign and trade in the summer, a la the Damon Severson contract, like if you can get anything for Provorov. But for the most part, it looks like, unless someone goes ahead and offers like a stupid package for Provorov, like we're talking a first round pick plus an A prospect plus a roster player, like my guess is that Provorov sees out the season with Columbus, and then in the summer probably walks. I would like to think that maybe they could trade his rights somewhere to get them to sign him, but my guess is that he probably walks in the summer for free. If you could get him signed for another 2 seasons, maybe, like, I would do that, especially, give guys like Matejchuk time to figure it out. Like, he's been a real revelation this season, and I like Provorov and Matejchuk playing together. I think that's a really good pairing. But I don't think you can commit to another. I'm going to say old, but like another 25 or older player for long term, especially, like, yes, they lost Juracek, but you've got Matejchuk coming up. I still think that you've got something with Stanislav Svozil. Like, Jake Christensen has been really good this season. Like, Branson's going to be back in the lineup next season. That's not really like a huge concern in terms of like long term. But then, you've got guys like Charlie Ellick that you think you have something with. Like, you probably want to grab a defenseman in the first round this year if you can. They're talking about maybe bringing in, someone with term. Like, if you can go out and you can get Owen Power, for example. Brent Clark might be available from the LA Kings. Like, if you can make that work, then frankly, you throw anything you can at the Kings to get a guy like Brent Clark. So, it doesn't make sense to me to keep Provorov longer than 2, maybe 3 seasons, right? And he's not going to settle for that. He's going to want 6+. the organization is going to want 3 or less, and I don't think they can meet in the middle there. Like, again, 4 or 5 to me is too long and is too short for Provorov. So I don't think they're gonna get close enough. That seems to be the consensus as well, just kind of like in the beat reporters that are there day in, day out. You know, they're not close with Provorov. Like, the Blue Jackets and Provorov's agent are still pretty far apart in terms of what both sides want. So my guess is Provorov probably leaves, whether that's at the trade deadline, which is looking less and less likely, or whether it's in the summer. I can't see him being a Blue Jacket come October. So I guess that takes this thing off Don Waddell's to-do list technically. I still think that there's some kind of pickup to be made. Ryan Donato has been linked to the Blue Jackets. He's got 18 goals on the season for Chicago, which is impressive because Chicago, right? Colton Sissons, who I believe is with the Nashville Predators, has also been linked. He kills penalties, is good at face-offs, 2 things that the Blue Jackets could use. I know that they want to, it's either going to be a veteran rental or for a low pick, or someone younger with term. And again, like, Owen Power's name has been thrown out there mostly by me, wishful thinking. Brent Clark available. I don't know that he's available for Columbus, but we know that Rob Blake likes to make deals with Columbus, so there might be something there. But for me, the main priority right now is Dante Fabbro, and maybe an extra forward in the playoff push. But I still think you see what you have in Chinikov, Jenna. Like, you're going to get Monahan back. Like, I don't think you want to reward them for the play they've done so far this season, but you also want to see how far this group will get you, right? So if they don't make a move, I'm fine with that. If they do make a move, as long as it's, I would like to keep at least one of our first round picks, but beyond that, let's see what happens. But to me, Fabbro, that's the next priority, right? You get that guy locked up, and then you can start looking, okay, what do we need next season? Who needs a contract this summer? Which guys that need contract this summer, now that we've figured out Olivier, UFAs, Jack Johnson, he'll be gone. Jordan Harris is an RFA, but I suspect that he'll probably be gone. Provorov, likely gone. Kevin Labanc will be gone. Mikael Pucha is an RFA, needs a new contract. James Van Riemsdyk I would keep for another year. He's been really good for the team, and he makes basically nothing. Dmitry Vronkov needs a contract. I could see him getting the Sillinger, Chinikov, Johnson, Marchenko contract. Just a downfall that UFA, even odds on whether he's back. So, like, not a ton of stuff to do over the summer. Like, to me, really, Vronkov is the priority over the summer. And then anything else, again, like, it's depth guys for the most part. So sign Fabbro, then you can turn your attention to Voronkov, and then you can fill in the gaps around those guys. So not the longest to-do list in the world, but we'll see how it goes. That's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow we will be, I think, previewing the Florida Panthers game that I think is happening tomorrow night. The problem with this international travel is that I never know what day anything is anymore. Tomorrow the Blue Jackets are in Florida playing the Panthers, but for, I think, the last time this season. So we'll preview that game. We'll see what's going on there. We'll see if there's any more Blue Jackets news. But that's it for me today. Thank you for listening, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOB FORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.